Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. Welcome to the Conquering Your Clownfish podcast. I'm thrilled to present my special guest, Graham Andrews. Last year, I had the pleasure of interviewing his wife, Amber, and I'm looking forward to hearing Graham's perspective on their journey. Graham is a partner in several small businesses, 3 to be precise, and is also a father to 3 incredible children, Mason, Lainey, and Andy. Their youngest, Andy, was born with an extra chromosome, bringing endless joy to their family ever since. Graham, great to have you on the show.
Brady, thank you so much, and excited to be on here and be a part of the show.
Well, we're excited to be able to have you on board. This is a little bit of a twist and a new endeavor for us at Conquering Your Clownfish, where we target individuals who really are focusing on sharing their story. Oftentimes we find them through social media. And what we have found is almost always, I'm talking like 95% of the time, those who are actively sharing on social media are moms. And very rarely do we ever get to have the perspective shown to us, whether that's through social media or a podcast, of the dad's perspective. And so this is something I'm thankful to be able to give a voice to the fathers out there and be able to help their story also be heard and told. So, Graham, this is going to be a lot of fun to visit with you today.
Absolutely excited.
Very good. So where do we begin? I have a lot of ideas on where we'd begin. I'd actually like to jump into the deep end of the pool right out of the gates. And so that's one thing that's nice, I would say, about a dad-to-dad conversation is it's just something we can probably just get out there right out of the gates. And so, as dads, I don't think that we grow up and ourselves getting married and having a family and having children. I don't think that we dream about what it would be like to have a child that has a disability or a child that has Down syndrome. And, in fact, I would say that that's something that we probably avoid like the plague as it relates to those dreams and aspirations for our child. And so, for you, Graham, you're a successful person, you're a successful business owner, you're a hard charger, you're a driver. I'd love to go back to that day when you did get introduced to this journey and you took that first step on your disability journey when you received diagnosis. And what were some of those emotions and feelings that you specifically as a dad were feeling in those moments?
Yeah. And we're going to go back, right? So I believe it was a Friday afternoon and my wife was at our salon. I was, working as well. And I get a call from her and, she's hysterical, And really what I'm just trying to do is, hey, first and foremost, are you okay? What's going on? Let's take a deep breath and, let's figure out what's going on. She said, well, I just received, the basically genetic testing diagnosis of Andy. And the only reason, I don't know if she went into this, but the only reason we really did that was really to see if it was a boy or girl, because we had other kids and we wanted to kind of just get a head start on, hey, boy clothes, girl clothes, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Come to find out, she got this diagnosis, and I think this is something that Amber is actually advocating for as well. She got her diagnosis on a Friday at 4 p.m. through an app, the MyChart app, and it was just the worst possible way to actually receive news like that, right? I mean, it's just like you can't call nobody. The doctor's already gone for the weekend. It's just not a good way to get news like that, right? And I know I'll never forget. She came home from the salon, in tears. Basically, just a lot of unknown, right? It's a lot of unknown of what's next, what to expect. You just don't know, and that's just kind of the best way to say it at that time and juncture. We didn't know in regards to you know, what the outcome was going to look like, what the, um, you know, I guess how severe the disability was going to be. I mean, we just had no idea, no clue. I mean, we had never been in this position before. We had
I
two,
actually want to ask you
yeah,
specifically about that. So Amber's hysterical.
yep,
She's very emotional.
yep,
You're on the phone, and then shortly thereafter, you're together.
yep,
Love to hear what's going through your mind as you're obviously trying to console your
right,
wife, and you are at the same time processing what she told
yeah,
you.
yeah. So a lot of at that point in time, to be honest with you, in my mind, I was, and in my mind, I was kind of panicking. But as a dad, you never show that, right? Above water, you calm and cool. Below water, your feet like a duck might be,
Get
kicking as hard as it can go, right? And so on the inside, my mind was racing, but on the outside, I knew that I had to be there for her, kind of calm her, calm and console. But something was telling me in my heart, it was all gonna be okay. It's all gonna be okay. It doesn't matter the disability as long as they're healthy. It's all gonna be okay. And I don't know, it's really weird. I had this odd calm sensation feeling in my heart, that everything was going to be fine no matter what, no matter what. And that's just really kind of the best way I can explain it. Um, but still, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown, a lot of, you know, kind of just anxiousness of what to expect. Because again, we've never been in this position before, you know. But I kind of always go back to, in my heart, I had this calm feeling that no matter what it was, the diagnosis was, everything was going to be fine. And we just had to, you know, take a deep breath. I had to consult Amber, but it was rough. It was a tough and long weekend. That was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday passed. I mean, very, very emotional weekend, which is absolutely, it was absolutely fine for her to be that way because again, we've never been in this position before. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know a lot of unknowns, but just the best way I could say it.
Graham, during that weekend, did you feel like you needed to really take that role of supporting Amber and being strong for Amber and just being that rock for her, just based on how emotional she was and how she was taking the news? Or did you find yourself having your own moments where maybe she was the one that was consoling you and you were as you were processing the diagnosis? What did that first 48 hours look like?
Yeah, truth be told, it really didn't hit me until Andy was actually born, and
Wow.
we can go into that,
Yeah.
in here in a little bit. That weekend, really, I just knew I had to be a rock for her, a
Yeah.
rock for my family, continue everything as if everything was normal. But the kids kind of could sense something was off. Our other two kids could kind of sense something was a little off. Why is mommy crying? Why is she upset? Why is she sad? So you kind of had to, for me, I was the rock and consoling her and helping her get through that weekend to get to kind of the next phase of, hey, what exactly is kind of going on here? What exactly is the diagnosis? And then kind of as I mentioned earlier before, it really didn't hit me until she was born. And I don't know, I once she was born, I think Amber remembers this. I kind of stepped away and went into the bathroom, or because in the labor, the room we were in, I went to the bathroom, and yeah, I kind of had my little moment there, for I would say a couple minutes, and then I said, hey, we're gonna do this. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Um, and my moment was really because of, I didn't know, again, a lot of unknown, what to expect, how to handle it. Again, all this was new, right? But I really, for some reason, it got to me because I was afraid that we would accept her, right? But how would everyone else accept her? And as a parent, as a dad, you know, I'm sure you can really relate to this. You'll do anything for your kids, right? And, in regards to people being mean to them or whatever it may be, I kind of had that moment. It really kicked into me in regards to, yes, we will accept it and welcome her and love her no matter what. How will others accept her? That's really kind of what got to me when kind of is we officially, the diagnosis was, hey, trisomy 21. And I knew our family, my side of the family, Amber's side of the family, immediate family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, all that. I knew they would accept her and love her unconditionally, and they have, no matter what. But for some reason, it came to me of, how would everyone else accept her?
That's a very real thing and a very real emotion. So, first off, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for putting the light on that. It actually brings back just a flood of memories as well. My boy's 17, and I remember feeling the same things. And there is a sense of hopelessness, maybe not that far, but definitely a sense of not being in control
Sure.
of that. And so, we've all seen just, kids can be tough, kids can be mean. And even, to typical kids, like they got to be tough to
Right.
withstand this stuff.
Yep.
And so, you feel like this love for your child. And you also just feel this sense of vulnerability that your child has. And it's just a daunting thing to consider, like, how are people going to accept my child? How are they going to treat them? And that's a very innate response that I think we have as dads that is hard to articulate, but and even more hard to understand just how much emotion that drives for us. And so I envision, and I picture you, I appreciate you sharing this, just you taking a few minutes to step aside into the bathroom and be able to allow this to hit you. And, that's a very real emotion for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm the type of person, Amber jokes with me about this and kind of laughs, but you kind of hit the nail around the head of, as dads, parents, you try to control everything, right? You can't control this. And I
Right.
felt, like you just mentioned, maybe a sense of helplessness. I was just like, I had to come to realization that I could not control this and I cannot control this at all. Um, that's one thing I had to come to kind of terms with. And yeah, just realize that I couldn't control the situation at all, so.
How did you accept that? Like, how did you work through that? Because, I mean, how'd you get through that?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know. I think each day Andy still teaches us and me a lot, seeing the world through her eyes. I mean, one of the things that you can be having a bad day, stressed out day, work, whatever it could be. And you come home, or I come home through the door, and there she is, just sitting there smiling at me, grinning at me. And it's just like, she's cute as a button. And, she doesn't realize that she's teaching us things without even saying anything. And I know that's hard and maybe kind of a weird thing, hard thing to say, or weird thing to say, hard to understand, but just without even saying anything, she has teach me and my wife more than we can ever imagine in 3 years already. It's wild. And I know it's hard to kind of explain, but it's just one of those things where you're having a bad day. You had a bad day, with work or whatever you want to call it, stressed out, whatever it may be. And there she is, just, standing in her pack and play as soon as you come in the door, grinning and smiling at you with pigtails. And it's just like, all that stuff goes away for a moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I want to ask, do you still feel like you struggle with the control thing? I mean, Andy's 3. She
Yeah.
hasn't gone to school yet.
Yeah.
She's not, she's not in kindergarten. She's not at school. Like, she's not a teenager. That, like, do you still have fear around that, or still have some emotion around that?
Yes and no. Yes, because like you said, kids can be tough these days. And, it's just one of those things where we're just going to have to, kind of understand and accept that, kids are tough these days in regards to that. Every night when we do like our little bedtime routine with the older kids, our bigger kids, I always, when my son is in a kind of an off mood, I'll always ask him, hey man, how's your day? What'd you learn? What's one new thing that you learned at school today? And if I still kind of consistency is off a little bit, I always, hey, was somebody mean to you today? Or, how was soccer today or whatever it may be, just so we can kind of understand and know and teach them kind of how to respond and be if someone is and kind of the right thing to do at that time. I say no because it's just one of the things you can't control. As much as I want to, or much as you want to, you can't really control that particular way of life, if that makes sense, or the way things are, if that makes sense.
So you have some experience now with Andy. If you could go back to that moment in the delivery room after she was born and you were feeling some emotion and you
Yeah.
were feeling some of that fear for the future and so forth, if you could go back to that moment and give yourself words of counsel and insight, what would you say
Yeah.
to yourself if you could go back?
Don't be afraid. This is a ride. I mean, it's so awesome to experience or be a parent to a child with disability. And I say that in regards to because she has taught us so much, seeing things through her eyes, through her, with that, she's not even, and she's not even saying anything in regards to, it's just the way there's something about her that makes us feel at peace. We feel calm. And, you know, the journey, the journey kind of went downhill quickly after, we got home. I think we were home for maybe 2 weeks. I will say that journey was very tough, 8 months in the ICU and things like that. 2 open heart surgeries, in and out of admissions. I mean, it was a whirlwind of, looking back on it, I don't really know how we did it. Honestly, I don't know. But I think the biggest piece of advice I would tell myself going back to that moment now, it's all going to be okay. It will be okay. And stop trying to control everything, because there's a reason why, there's a purpose, there's a reason why she was given to us.
Yeah, I actually want to go back to some of that challenge that you had in the ICU. I'd encourage our listeners to go back and listen to Amber's podcast. She does a fantastic job in explaining just the details around that. But I'm curious in that moment for you, Graham, as somebody that really has done a wonderful job in supporting Amber and encouraging and just like being that absolute rock for her. That had to be pretty hard in that moment to go through some of those things that you went through. And I'm curious, was there anybody there that was your support, that was somebody that you could turn to? Obviously, Amber is always there as your spouse and the mother of your guys' children. But was there anybody else that you could turn to in those moments?
And this is kind of unique situation. My parents were kind of the people I could speak with and talk to, because they had been through a similar situation with me.
Wow.
So when I was 6 months old, I had contracted pneumonia, trouble in the airway, breathing, was rushed, to the hospital, ICU, all that stuff. And they actually had to do an emergency tracheotomy on me. And I was in the hospital for 4, 5 months straight. A very, 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 similar situation of living at the hospital. I have an older brother. It was kind of eerie of hearing all the kind of the if you line up all the details, right? So
Yeah.
I had an older brother. They were actually, I want to say, in the works of building a house as well back then. It was really eerie, kind of all the details. So when I spoke with my parents, And I could relate to them in regards to what I was going through. And they just kept saying, it will be okay. Everything works out in the end. And there's a reason and there's a purpose that she was brought to you and Amber. And so I know there's many emotional phone calls to them. Yeah, there are many emotional phone calls, and you just try to keep going in the moment, but then there's sometimes where you know you just have a breakdown.
Yeah.
You have a breakdown, and it was very tough, but I could reach out to them because I knew they had been there before.
See that
And it was
the
really kind of eerie. It's kind of how things lined up the way
similar.
similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
That's something that I've just observed and something I'm still processing because for moms, for our spouses, it's expected. It's 100% normal and totally even encouraged for them to have those breakdowns, for them to have those moments of emotion, and rightfully so, like so well deserved that you carry this child, you nurture this child, then you give birth to this child, and just all of the emotions that go along with that, that it is so expected and encouraged and supported for those emotional moments and those breakdowns that are there. And the reality is, I don't like, there's not a rule book and there's not a written rule for dads, but I would say that is kind of part in our society is we're not supposed to have that. And maybe this is more of a self-imposed unwritten rule that we as dads put on ourselves, but we're not supposed to have a breakdown. We're not supposed to feel those feels because we have a responsibility as being a caretaker or a provider, a protector, being the dad, the rock, the strong one, being there for our spouse in her moment of need, being there for our children in their moment of need. But I mean, just in total reality, I think that's one of our challenges as dads that we face right now is that unwritten rule. I'm a big baseball guy, and there's unwritten rules in baseball and what you can or
right,
can't do,
what
right?
you can and can't do, right.
That's right. And I think that we as dads have a set of unwritten rules as well that honestly are causing a lot of challenges, especially for dads that are entrusted with a loved one that has a disability.
And if
And
you,
so I was
yeah,
thinking of that as you were sharing that.
yeah, and if you do have a breakdown, don't let anybody see it, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and you brought that up. I've never seen my dad cry. I'll put it
Mm.
that.
Wow.
I only knew that he may have gone maybe in the back room away, you know, to then cry, if that makes sense. I know when I lost my grandmother when I was little, things like that. I'll never forget. I do remember. It's almost like you never do it in front of people. As a dad, you never do it in front of people. You go in the back room or you go be by yourself for a second or minute. You have your moment and then you come back, right? And you continue to be the rock.
That's real. And so as you're sharing that, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
My guess is there's probably a lot of listeners that would be able to say the same thing, that whether they have seen their dad cry or not, it's not something that is, I would even, it's part of the unwritten rule, right?
right, right.
Whether or not that's right or wrong. And so now look at it through the lens of Andy and your feelings for her and the way that she makes you feel and the way that you are as a dad, as a human being, as a person when you're around her, and that guard that she is allows us to let down. So I'm doing the same thing and thinking of my boys, Nash and Cooper. And so, as you're sharing about your dad, like I feel like, you know what? Yes, like we got to be strong. But
Right.
then I think of my boys and I think of your amazing Andy, and the person that we are with them would absolutely cry in front of them
Yeah.
and would be able to let those emotions down, right? And because we know that that person, and I know that my Nash would give me a huge hug. He'd say, "It's okay, Daddy. Like it's okay." And here's my 17-year-old boy, Whereas my 15-year-old boy, my typical kid, not in a million years, right?
Right,
Like
right,
I
right.
probably wouldn't even feel comfortable because of that unwritten rule or whatever. When in reality, that is just the superpower of our kids that have an extra chromosome or a disability, that they allow us to be our very best selves, because the people that we are around them is truly the people that we should try and be around everybody. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
100%. And it's just something I can't explain it. It's just you hit the nail right on the head. I can't explain it any better than you did, but that's so true. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
true.
I know it. I feel it. And it's a feeling that is, I would say, probably impossible to articulate with words, but it's a feeling that is undeniable. And our listeners know that in those quiet moments with our children that have what the world describes as a disability, that we know as actually the complete opposite of like a very special ability, in those moments with them, it's feelings and it's experiences that are very difficult, if not impossible, to articulate into words. But yet we just know that we want to be our best selves in those moments, and we can be our best selves around them. No judgment, no guile, complete acceptance of who we are. And what a special example that we get to
Yeah,
have in our lives.
100%.
This has been wonderful, Graham. When I do these episodes, I just am always shocked at how fast the time goes by. But I just feel encouraged. I feel supported. I feel heard. I just feel inspired to be a better dad and to be a better husband in having this conversation with you. So thank you for your influence on me and your example. I feel like we absolutely are teammates in this journey, and
100%.
we're charging up the mountain together. So I'm thankful to be your teammate in this.
No, well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, it's already, the time's up already. That went by really quick. We can keep going, right? No, Brady, thank you. It was an honor that you reached out to have me on here. And, special to me to be on here. And again, thank you very much. And it was a pleasure.
Yeah, well, thank you, Graham. The pleasure is mine, and excited to be able to continue our dialogue, and hope to be able to meet you in person someday.
Absolutely. We'll do it again.
Absolutely. Very good, my friend. Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.